So today's topic is GST, Goods Service Tax. So what is GST? The tax that is collected by the government. Whenever we go to any shop to purchase anything, we have to pay a GST for it. For example, if I purchase this pen at rupees 15, extra 10% GST will be added to it. So that percentage, that amount of tax that is collected by the government when we buy or purchase anything is called GST. Now GST is of two types. Since the sales are of two types. Number one, within the state, and number two, outside the state. So when the sales take place within the state, we call it intrastate, intra. And when the sales is carried out outside the state, it is called interstate. So intrastate means, for example, you purchase. Let's take the example of West Bengal. Okay. There's a manufacturer, okay, who is selling certain goods to a shopkeeper, let's say. Alright. Who himself stays in West Bengal again. And this shopkeeper sells the same thing to the consumer. All of them are from West Bengal. So the shopkeeper purchases something from the manufacturer in West Bengal. Even the consumer is purchasing the same goods from the shopkeeper in West Bengal. So this whole transaction is carried within West Bengal. So within state. So this kind of transaction is intrastate. Okay. And the next one is interstate. Interstate means, again, suppose someone is in West Bengal, the manufacturer, and he sells it to someone, dealer, whoever it is, who is from Maharashtra. Alright? So, the manufacturer from West Bengal is selling the goods to a dealer in Maharashtra. So, it is outside the state. This kind of transaction is not taking place in West Bengal. It is outside West Bengal. So these kind of transaction is called interstate. And the transactions which is carried in the same state, within the same state, is called intrastate. Now GST is divided accordingly in terms of intrastate and interstate. Now, if the transaction is interstate, if the sale is carried out outside the state, then we call it IGST, which means the total tax is collected by the central government. Okay? The total tax is collected by the central government. If the transaction takes place outside the state, the total tax is collected by the central government. But if the mode of transaction is within the state, which is intrastate, then 50% goes to state government, which is called SGST, and 50% is CGST. SGST means it will go to the state government, and CGST, central government. So the tax, whatever the tax is, the tax collected by the government will be divided into two parts. 50% will be collected by the state government, 50% will be collected by the central government. For example, let's say GST is 300. So, if the sale is intrastate, this 300 rupees will be divided equally between the state government and the central government. So SGST will get 150 rupees and CGST will get 150 rupees. But in case of interstate, IGST, whole of the 300 will go to the central government. It will not be collected by the state government. IGST, total 300 will be collected by the central government. So let's have a look at an example of intrastate and how is the GST divided in case of intrastate. So first, there's the wholesaler. He sells the goods to the shopkeeper and the shopkeeper sells the goods to the consumer, right? So for example, a wholesaler sells a certain amount of goods to a shopkeeper. Let's say he sells to the shopkeeper W2S, let's say a TV set at 12,000, okay? And the GST being, let's say, 12% GST. Alright, GST is 12%. The wholesaler sells the TV set to the shopkeeper at 12,000. Okay. Now, the shopkeeper will sell this TV set at a profit of, let's say, 10%. Okay. At 10% profit, he sells it to the consumer. Alright. So, the SP of the wholesaler is the cost price of the shopkeeper. And the selling price of the shopkeeper is the cost price of the consumer, right? So, CP of the shopkeeper is 12,000, right? Now, he will be selling the TV set at 10% profit, right, to the consumer. So, 10% profit means 10% more, right? So, 10 plus 100 by 100. So, he is selling it at okay, 1,30,000. Yes, 12,000. Sorry. He is selling at 13,200. Okay. So, wholesaler sells to the shopkeeper at 12,000. Shopkeeper sells it to the consumer at 10% profit, which is 13,200. Now let's talk about the GST. How will the GST be levied? TV set is coming in. The TV set is coming in. He is buying the TV set from the wholesaler. So it's coming in. So with respect to the wholesaler, the TV is going to the shopkeeper in, right? So the tax in this case will be input tax with respect to the shopkeeper, because the shopkeeper is taking the TV set from the wholesaler. Taking in, you can remember like that. He's taking the TV set from the wholesaler, so it is called the input tax. Now this TV set will be going out from the shopkeeper, right? Out from the shopkeeper to the consumer. So that tax is called output tax. Alright, so now it is divided into two types of tax. When he is purchasing from the wholesaler, he is taking the TV set, taking in input tax. Now the same TV set will be going out because he is selling it to the consumer. Going out, output tax. Taking in, input tax. Okay. Now this input tax, since it is intrastate, right? Since it is intrastate, so the GST will be divided into two parts. SGST and CGST. Here also GST, SGST, CGST. Two parts. So let's calculate. Let's draw a line. This is the input tax divided into SGST, CGST. So it will be divided, 12% is the GST. So 6% of the purchasing price of this is 12,000, right? And this is also 6% of 12,000. Okay, so we can calculate 6 by 100 into 12,000. So it's 720. Same thing here, 720, which means that rupees 720 goes to the state government, 720 goes to the central government. Now again, output tax again divided, since it is intrastate. Okay, make sure intrastate. So output tax again divided into two parts, SGST, CGST. Again 6% off. This time, what is the purchasing price of the consumer? It's not 12,000. Purchasing price of the consumer is 13,200, right? So the tax will be based on the purchasing price. So 6 by 100 into 13,200 gets cancelled. 6 2s are 12, 6 3s are 18, 19, 6 1s are 6, 792. Again here the same thing, 792. Now you might get the question, what is the tax paid by the consumer? So output tax is the tax paid by the consumer. Output tax is the tax paid by the consumer. Okay. Now you will tell me then what is the tax paid by the shopkeeper? Will it be the input tax? No. Tax paid by the shopkeeper will not be the input tax. Output tax minus input tax. So the tax paid by the shopkeeper is output tax minus input tax. Then what is the input tax? Who pays the input tax? The tax that is paid by the wholesaler, the first person actually, is the tax paid by the wholesaler is the input tax. The tax paid by the consumer is the output tax, and tax paid by the shopkeeper here would be output tax minus input tax. Always remember the middleman, the middle person's tax is output tax minus input tax. Okay, this person tax will be equivalent to input tax. This one's tax will be equivalent to output tax. So what will be the tax paid by this one? Output tax minus input tax. Now, what is the amount of tax that will be collected by the government? Because there's input tax, output tax. So the amount of tax that is received by the government is the tax paid by the wholesaler plus the tax paid by the shopkeeper. Okay. Tax collected by the government equals to tax paid by the wholesaler, that is the input tax, plus tax paid by the shopkeeper, that is output tax minus input tax. So in this particular question, let's find out the tax which is paid by the shopkeeper. So tax paid by the shopkeeper would be 792 minus 720, right? So 792 minus 720, which is 72 rupees. Okay, and let's find out the tax which is paid, which is collected by the government. 720 plus 72, which is 792. Actually, the tax that is collected by the government is the output tax. See, 792. But if you are being asked this question, you will have to show this method. And I'll break it down and I'll tell you why is it coming to output tax. See, the tax paid by the wholesaler is what? Input tax, right? Plus, tax paid by the shopkeeper is output minus input. So output tax minus input tax, right? What's happening over here is this is plus, this is minus, it is getting cancelled, and we are just left with the output tax. So in case if you are running short of time or you don't have time, so you can directly use the output tax. Only in case if you don't have time, you can directly write the output tax. This is the tax that goes to the state government. Sorry, not the state government, the government. Like be it state government, central government, this is how it is divided. Okay. So the tax collected by the state government will be this plus this, that is 792. Tax collected by the central government, again 720 plus 72, 792 again. Okay. So this is how we would be solving numericals on GST. If A sells something to B and B sells something to C, so B will be the middle person, right? So the input tax for B, this side will be the input tax and this side will be the output tax. Why? Because B is purchasing something from A. So that particular thing is going to B. B is taking it. So in input tax, the tax from A to B is the input tax, and from B to C, the selling price, the tax which is based, tax collected on the SP of A or CP of B is the input tax. Okay, tax that is collected on the either the selling price of A or the cost price of B is the input tax. And what is output tax? Tax collected on the SP of B or CP of C is the output tax. Why this is input? Because this is going in B, into B, right? B is taking it from A. And why is it output? Because it is going out, like in, out, in, taking in, out. Input tax, output tax. How is input tax collected? Whatever the percentage of the GST is, you will have to calculate on the basis of the amount of the selling price of A or the cost price of B. Whatever the selling price of A is, that will be the cost price of B. And output tax, whatever the selling price of B is, based on that, whatever the percentage of the tax that is levied on the selling price of B to C. Okay. If it is intrastate, then it will be divided into, equally divided into SGST, CGST, SGST, CGST. Input tax is the tax that is paid by A. Tax paid by A is the input tax. Tax paid by B, the middle person, is output tax minus input tax. And tax paid by C, usually they are the consumers, equals to only output tax. Sorry for my handwriting.